Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in the Roon, the German tech tree tier 8 absolute unit of a cruiser, and we actually have a pretty unique build on this ship. Guys, I'm not going to lie, the game is getting a little stale for me, and I know that we just got these legendary ships, but I guess it's, any game that you play day in and day out, of course, you're going to get a little bit bored of. So in order to cure a little bit of that boredom, I have decided to try a few unique builds. Now, this is definitely one of the more damage-oriented builds. We are running Augustin Riegerwald with the full AP pen, a full AP build, and then we have Arthas the Cold for our fighter planes. And if you guys did not know, that commander, it decreases the total time of your fighter plane, but what it does is when that fighter plane is up, you get I think it's 10 or an extra percentage worth of damage. On top of that, we are running the legendary mod on the Roon, and as you guys know, the Roon, being 75% of a Hindenburg, can absolutely spit out the damage. So for my battleship mains that are going to complain about the HE spam, we only shoot HE a little bit of the time, we don't get that many fires, and we still absolutely dominate and rack up a nice damage total in this game. That being said, damage is not your main priority, although the German, Japanese, and French cruisers, and Italian to a certain extent, that is a decent chunk of your job as you are lacking utility. The British cruisers, with a few exceptions as well, because you are lacking that radar utility. Now, that being said, you should not, as the gentleman yesterday suggested, you should not YOLO rush into the cap early on. That is not your job in a cruiser. If you think so, I would recommend going back to Tier 1 or watching some other, instructional videos on this game, because a cruiser's job is the ultimate utility role. Now, when the situation calls for it, yes, you should push into the cap, and the Germans actually have a pretty good advantage in that regard, as they have the pretty decent and long-range sonar that some other nations don't get access to. Now, that being said, you have to look at the minimap and assess all situations. We've said it so many times, each game is going to be different. But here, I assess the situation. We put our cruiser right in the middle of Haven here, and we know Haven has the messed up spawns, but this Prince Eugen is doing exactly what every man should do and put himself in the dead center of the cap here, and, well, he's going to find out very quickly that this build is not messing around. We angle out, we are not broadside, and yeah, we threw our plane up at the last moment. We ended up getting a bunch of overpens, but just two massive chunks of his health. And yeah, good night, thanks for playing. I think that Turtleback saved him from getting Citadel, but that is actually a pretty close range to arm the top of that Turtleback. But regardless, our team actually finished off that kill, and somebody else on our team died, a battleship, as he was being a man and rushing. I'm sorry, dude, that is going to live in my head for the next couple of days with how obnoxious that was. I actually got another message last night. You guys heard this on stream, and I told the story wrong apparently. So, Mr. Gentleman, if you're watching, feel free to share. I'm sure that it's really working out in your favor. But regardless, here we have these few battleships, so we're just going to angle away. As you can see, we took a little bit of damage, but not much. But we are still close to the cap. And as you can see, we are still attracting a little bit of damage, which is definitely a secondary priority in a cruiser like this, as we actually took a shot at that Sumner and got a nice 2 overpins. You could argue that HE would have been better in this situation, but again, I'm playing with this build, so always when you get tanking battleships and or destroyers, German HE, especially on the 203mm guns, will absolutely rip. That quarter pen does a fantastic job. But I realize that this Massachusetts is actually probably just going to tank, and that, of course, is when he surprises me. But you can see we've basically been shooting AP this entire time, and we've racked up a pretty nice damage total. Now, that being said, for the number of hits, you would ideally like it to be a little bit more. But for DPM cruisers like this, if you can put yourself in a good spot, just keep racking up those hits. But in the meantime, we actually popped our Hydro because we knew that Sumner was near, and I'm glad I did. As you can see, the torpedoes are on the way. Just a quick little side note talking about being aggressive, as we get a beautiful chunk on that Massachusetts. I wish I would have thrown the plane up. I don't get too many broadsides up until the end of this game on battleships, but you guys, if you remember my first Roon video, or the one I did a few weeks ago or months ago, we got a 15K salvo on a broadside Yamato, and that was out without the added AP pen, and that was without Arthas the Cold and the plane ability. So potentially a 25k-ish salvo with all of these buffs. You factor in the legendary mod as well, and you can rack up some pretty gnarly damage. It makes me excited for when the Hindenburg comes in 3 to 5 business years. But speaking on the point we were trying to get across earlier, yes, I could YOLO rush into the C cap now, but what good does it do if I put myself in a crossfire? The true, showing your true skill as a player is to see the situations ahead of time. What was the last known position of that Massachusetts? He was going forward on that flank. Our Kansas is low, so what happens if the Kansas dies and we have 2 battleships over there and I put myself in C? I have an aircraft carrier in front of me as well as a destroyer and 2 battleships on my right as well as a potential cruiser on my left. So reading the minimap is a skill that not a lot of players possess, and as a result, they will end up blaming their teammates more than they really should. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But regardless, we don't have time to think about that. We have this Massachusetts coming around the corner here, and this is when I want to use that plane. We've got a beautiful broadside. Get a nice chunk, a little bit maybe more towards the back than I would have liked. It could have potentially hit the torpedo belt, and that is when he decides to turn out. I'm not exactly sure why, as we get a beautiful hit on the side angled belt there and a little bit on the superstructure. 5 pens for 8k, so imagine if we would have connected all 9, especially in getting full penetrations there. And that is sometimes what a lot of people don't realize. Those full AP pens hurt a lot more than constantly spamming HE. Now, of course, if you're a Suzuya at 18 kilometers, keep the HE loaded, and it's all ship dependent. Some ships have better fire chances than others. The Germans do actually have pretty good HE, but you get, like we just showed, getting AP on those broadsides is far more effective. Speaking about team play, though, my team has decided to huddle around the CC in the middle here, and we are actually giving up all of our advantages. The destroyer out on the flank actually did a half-decent job in this game. It's not the way I would have played the ship. Well, it's actually a Z-44, so I wouldn't have played the ship at all. That thing is just terrible. This guy actually does a good job to survive and be somewhat effective. But that is the playstyle of that ship. You have to get out there and just spam torps, which is insanely boring to me. But getting back to our team, they have all decided to gather up in the middle here. Our aircraft carrier is not going after the destroyer, so we have some work to do. We can see that the Carnot has moved into the Bravo cap, and he has somewhat access to our broadsides. So what we're not going to do is chase that Bismarck and that Massachusetts into potentially the carrier without really knowing where the destroyer is. If you're a carrier player, go after destroyers. Now, I think the carrier did have 1 drop on that destroyer, but after that, he just left him alone to go after a Massachusetts and a Bismarck together. The Bismarck doesn't have the best AA, but the Massachusetts does, and especially when the battleships are grouped up, you are doubling that AA bubble. It always pains me when carriers back up to the back of the map, as ours is doing, and then go after battleships in groups. It's like, well, you're just giving them a clear sky and providing no benefit for your team. But here's a good example of angling. We are at a slight angle, probably not quite enough, ideally, to that Carnot, and he only did 1 pen and 1 overpen worth of damage. On top of that, we actually did switch to the HE as he was angled, and as a result, we do have a permanent fire on him, which is good for us because we are ticking into almost the ×5 territory of our epic reload. We don't have any kills just yet, and kills aren't really important other than the fact that they do give us a slight damage bonus with our legendary reload mod. But here we have this Massachusetts decided to do another U-turn and is moving in, so we tell him that our team we tell our team that they need to get on the ball and wipe out one of these guys, because now we are truly in a little bit of a pickle here. We are in a crossfire. So we need to eliminate one of these ships, with the Massachusetts being the obvious choice. So a shout out to that Odin. He actually played pretty well, so GG's to that gentleman. He kind of helped bring this game back. But we're actually still down on ships, and we are down on caps. So now it is time to be a man. Unfortunately, though, you guys can see we are now located, and there is no ships spotting us in our scope. So we know that the destroyer is probably out in front of us or kind of on our left there. Here, though, this Carnot looks like he's being pushed from the backside, so we're going to go ahead and pop that. Of course, the AP on the broadside, and here's one of the best salvos of the day as we pop, 16,000 damage from him. In the meantime, we popped our Hydro because we were located and we had not seen torpedoes in a while, and we assumed that the Sumner was lining us up, and we were correct. I know that's a lot of information in a very short amount of time, but all of that information is going on in my brain when I play. Why am I detected? Why am I located? What's my biggest threat? Where is the next, what do I need to do next? If you are not thinking about these things, I hate to break it to you, but you need to start, right? Because if not, then you're not really advancing or going to be getting better as a player. If you're just loading into each game and thinking, go A, do damage, that's not really the most effective or most efficient play style. Now, again, it's a free-to-play game. Play however you want. We are not going to be telling people how to play. But if you're watching these videos and wondering how I'm doing all this stuff and wonder why I constantly get great games, it's because of my positioning, my situational awareness, and just a host of skills that I've learned, from playing this game for a moderately long time. And next on my list is getting into this Bravo cap here. We know that destroyer is behind us, so what are we going to do to make him ineffective? We're going to run away from him. Yes, I could go chase him with my Hydro, but we leave the B cap open. Now our destroyer is getting into it, but we are far more effective DPMing. Also, I was a little bit spiteful to the carrier because he has not detected him, and I knew that he was going to die. On top of that, our Odin did push in, and like I said, he was a pretty good player as we see another set of torpedoes come our way, so we are confident that the Sumner is now behind us. But moving into Bravo here allows us to shoot the ships in the backfield, their carrier, and those two Bismarcks, as well as push in and defend our fellow friendlies. So there's not, like I said in all my videos, there's not a right and wrong play, but there are better and worse plays. Well, I mean, there's obviously the wrong play of pushing into Shard's B-spawn, but how many references is that to yesterday's video? But here I almost took a torpedo, so let's not be a bot, Aaron, and focus on the game. That Odin, like I said, is focusing that Veneto. We don't really have shots on him, but we're not too worried about it because that is when this Bismarck pops up, and we need to get shots on him. We have 2 planes left, and the Roon actually has 5 planes. I don't know why, but with the Arthas, the cold build, we are sure going to enjoy it. Not the most effective hit, 7 pins for 8.5k, but we're going to take it anyway because that battleship does some damage, and we get the finishing touch to rack up a nice 180,000 damage. And we still have some ships to go. Now, at this point, I could have potentially turned around and saved our Shokaku, but I almost wanted to teach him a lesson. On top of that, we have 3 caps, so I don't want to, accidentally eat a torp because I am Hydro down at this time. That being said, that Veneto was last spotted going this way, and that is when our Odin goes down, so we actually do need to get a kill, or at least hold all of these caps in order to get the win. So, looking at the scoreboard is also a skill that some players don't possess. We've seen, it was on stream the other night, and our team actually did end up getting the win, but there was a Shimakaze alive left versus a Kurfürst, and we were winning on points. And he decided to just charge right at him, at least for, a little bit of time there. So paying attention to the scoreboard is just going to, allow you to do better and have more fun in this game. Looking, what your team needs and the situation. But here we have this Veneto, and we probably could have used the HE, but I just wanted to rack up the AP, and we're still getting massive hits. We've done 13,000 damage to this guy. Now, I believe he had a heal, and if we would have had a little bit more visibility or a little bit more time, then we probably would have gotten this kill, but unfortunately, he is going to survive. You can see our AP chunks are just doing 2,000 and 3,000 damage every, 5, 6, 7 seconds there. Ah, yes, you have reaped the rewards of what you have sown, Shokaku, as we give him the coveted good job there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you go and spot destroyers, most times your teams will shoot at them. Regardless, you should still always go after the destroyer. Now, I will say I think the Shokaku did try at least once, but you need to hunt that destroyer down as a carrier. I know my destroyer players aren't going to like to hear that, and I know a lot of them have, been whining about the radar cruisers, but if you're a good destroyer player, that is, things you have to work on. You never hear cruiser players whine about getting dev struck by torpedoes or dev struck by a battleship, right? But you always hear the destroyer players whining about radar, and you always hear the battleship players whining about HE spam. When did the cruiser players get to whine, right? Did I not get enough fires? But you actually notice the timer is ticking down, and we are not ahead on the points. Our Z did get into the cap, but thank goodness that the Z went ahead and spotted that Bismarck. He was super low, and we actually did get the finishing kill. The other Veneto, or the other ship, did kill that Veneto, so we would have ticked the points anyway, but that Bismarck did secure, killing that Bismarck did secure the win for our team. So a GG's to our team. Like I said, that Z44 and that Odin played very well, getting the 2K XP totals there, and then as we look at the Shokaku in just disappointment. But a nice 203,000 damage, 3 kills, a few defends, and 1 assist in capture there, all without being a man. So no, I'm done with those references, guys, I promise. But here is our build, Mr. Augustin Riegerwald with a full AP pen, and the perk you're really looking for is those Kraken shells in slot 2. But we also do have Mimbelli for reload, and then of course Arthas the Cold, which does add that damage when your fighter plane is active. So a very unique build to run, but a very fun build in this boring meta of same spawns and same maps, and of course the same teammates. So we actually upgraded him after this, so I'm excited to play this build when I get home tonight or later on this weekend. Make sure you guys are there for the training rooms. I think we're going to do some historic battles tonight. I'm not sure, but appreciate the view on the video, guys. I love you guys. The support on the video yesterday was awesome. Yeah, that'll do it for this evening. Hope you guys have a good one. I'm out. Peace.